Most people quit healing at the exact moment it starts working, not because it failed, because it started to feel uncomfortable. Here is the part nobody explains. Your brain protects what is familiar before it accepts what is healthy. This means anxiety can feel normal. Calm can feel unsafe. Overthinking can feel productive. Stillness can feel wrong. When you begin changing these patterns, your brain does not register improvement, it registers danger. Scripture described this long before brain science existed. Renewal of the mind is not inspiration, it is replacement. Old inputs built your current patterns. New inputs must be repeated until the brain accepts them as safe. When you understand this rule, discomfort stops looking like failure and starts looking like evidence that change has started. This is why many people feel worse when they begin healing habits. They expect relief, but experience resistance. They expect clarity, but experience tension. They expect peace, but feel instability. What they are feeling is not emotional failure, it is pattern withdrawal. The brain is losing its familiar operating environment. When familiar stress signals disappear, the brain experiences uncertainty instead of relief. This is why people return to old thinking even when they want change. The old pattern feels stable even when it causes damage. The new pattern feels unstable even when it leads to healing. Until you understand this conflict, you will misinterpret progress as regression and stop the process that was actually starting to work. Your brain is not designed to make you happy. Your brain is designed to make you predictable. Predictability reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty feels like risk to the nervous system. This is why repeated emotional states become default settings. If stress was repeated, stress becomes normal. If fear was repeated, fear becomes automatic. If overthinking was repeated, overthinking becomes the brain's preferred operating mode. The brain builds efficiency through repetition, not through improvement. This is the mechanism most people misunderstand. Healing does not just introduce better feelings. Healing introduces unfamiliar patterns. The brain initially treats unfamiliar patterns as errors. When you try to respond differently, think differently, or slow down your reactions, the brain sends discomfort signals to push you back toward the known pattern. This is not psychological weakness, this is neural efficiency protection. Your brain is trying to keep the system running the way it has learned to run. This is why change often feels harder before it feels easier. You are not just changing emotions, you are interrupting automated brain pathways. Until a new pattern is repeated enough times, the old pathway remains the strongest root. This is why healing requires intentional repetition instead of emotional understanding. Understanding alone does not install new patterns, repetition does. Scripture describes this replacement process with unusual precision. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This is not describing motivation, it's describing pattern interruption and pattern replacement. Conforming means repeating what already exists. Renewing means installing what was not there before. The instruction is mechanical. Stop reinforcing the old pattern, start installing the new one. Proverbs 4:23 gives another operational instruction. Above all else, guard your heart, because everything you do flows from it. Guarding means controlling input. Input determines pattern formation. Pattern formation determines behavior output. Scripture describes the same sequence neuroscience observes. Input becomes repetition, repetition becomes wiring, wiring becomes automatic response. This is why change in scripture always focuses on what you repeatedly think and repeatedly say. The goal is not emotional relief, the goal is mental replacement. When the input changes consistently, the pattern must eventually change. This is not framed as inspiration, it is framed as a process you can apply. Scripture treats mental change as a structured system, not a feeling. The brain strengthens whatever it uses most. This happens through a process called reinforcement. Every repeated thought strengthens the pathway that produced it. Every repeated reaction lowers the effort required to repeat it again. This is why familiar emotional responses feel automatic. The brain saves energy by using existing routes instead of building new ones. New patterns require more effort because the pathway is weak. This creates mental friction. Friction feels like discomfort. Discomfort is often misread as something being wrong. In reality, discomfort often means a new pathway is being attempted. If the new response is repeated enough times, the brain starts reducing resistance. The new pathway becomes easier to access. The old pathway begins weakening from lack of use. This is how brain change actually happens, not through realization, not through intention, through repeated activation. This explains why healing often feels difficult at first and natural later. The difficulty is the cost of building the new root. The ease comes after the root becomes established. This is where most people make the critical mistake. They wait until healing feels natural before they continue. The system works in the opposite direction. You continue until it becomes natural. Start with one controlled replacement action. Choose one stabilizing input you will repeat daily. This can be a short scripture spoken slowly for 5 minutes, not for emotion, for installation. When discomfort appears, do not interpret it as failure. Interpret it as resistance from the old pattern. Your only task is repetition. Speak the same stabilizing input at the same time each day. The brain learns through consistency more than intensity. 5 minutes daily builds more change than occasional long effort. Do this for at least 21 days to begin weakening the old pattern. Continue toward 30 days to stabilize the new response. Continue towards 66 days to make the new pathway automatic. You are not trying to feel different immediately, you are training familiarity. When the new pattern becomes familiar, the discomfort reduces automatically. This is why repetition is emphasized throughout Scripture. Repetition is not for memory alone. Repetition is for installation. Joshua 1:8 instructs constant meditation not as reflection, but as pattern building. Keep this book of the law always on your lips and meditate on it day and night. This describes constant input replacing default input. The goal is not inspiration, the goal is saturation. What saturates attention begins shaping automatic thought. This is why speaking and thinking the same stabilizing input daily matters. Each repetition weakens the authority of the previous pattern. Each repetition strengthens the replacement pathway. Over time, the brain stops resisting what it hears most. What once felt forced begins to feel normal. What once felt uncomfortable begins to feel stable. This is why people who stop early never experience the shift. They quit during resistance instead of after installation. Repetition is the bridge between discomfort and stability. Here is the simple execution loop. Choose one stabilizing scripture and use it as a replacement input. Speak it slowly for 5 minutes every day. Do this whether it feels effective or not. Expect resistance during the first phase. Expect mental pushback during the second phase. Expect neutrality before you expect comfort. This is the normal installation sequence. Continue for 21 days to interrupt the old pattern. Continue for 30 days to make the new response easier. Continue for 66 days to make the response automatic. Do not measure progress by how you feel. Measure progress by whether you repeated the process. If you repeat the input, the pattern must eventually adjust. This is not motivation, this is installation. Healing feels uncomfortable because you are leaving the familiar operating system. The discomfort is not a warning to stop, it is evidence the replacement has started. Stay with the repetition long enough and the brain will accept the new pattern as safe.